Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into some incredibly compelling and honestly pretty dramatic source material. We're going to unpack a really intense perspective on the existential threats surrounding artificial intelligence. Now look, regardless of where you personally stand on the AI debate, the narrative arc presented in this source is absolutely fascinating. It takes us all the way from the foundational definitions of machine learning straight into some truly chilling geopolitical predictions. As always, my goal here is to guide you through these arguments completely impartially so you can clearly understand exactly what's being argued and why. Let's get into it.
Right out of the gate, take a look at this incredibly provocative quote attributed to the worldview of tech billionaire Peter Thiel. This really sets the stage, doesn't it? It shows the incredibly high stakes, almost apocalyptic terms being used by some of AI's most powerful proponents. By literally equating opposition to AI with something as extreme as the Antichrist, we instantly see that we're not just talking about the latest software update here. We are analyzing a worldview where technological progress is practically treated with a religious fervor. Okay, let's map out exactly where we're headed today. First, the 3 levels of AI. Second, the ultimate surveillance threat. Third, Silicon Valley's moral dilemma. Fourth, the geopolitical endgame. And finally, technology versus moral growth. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the 3 levels of AI and mapping the path to superintelligence. The source breaks down the evolution of artificial intelligence into a really rapid 3-step escalation. Step 1 is simply AI. This is where we live right now. It's single-task mastery. These are systems that are fundamentally better than a human at one specific thing, whether that's analyzing giant data sets, playing a complex game, or writing a specific block of code. Step 2 is AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence. We are pushing right up against this line today. This is a system with multitask, generalized ability. Think of a system that can paint a masterpiece, write a beautiful poem, and also tell you exactly how to synthesize a complex chemical compound. But Step 3, well, that's where the alarm bells really start ringing. That's ASI. To really wrap your head around artificial superintelligence, or ASI, you have to look at the staggering scale the source uses to define it. It's described literally as the equivalent of every human brain that has ever lived, plus every brain currently living, combined into a single entity. To put that into hardware terms for a second, you'd need a server farm the size of planet Earth using today's technology. The crucial takeaway here is that ASI would process information so fast and think so incredibly far ahead of us that it would appear completely godlike to human comprehension. We simply wouldn't be equipped to understand its thought process. Moving right along to Section 2, the ultimate surveillance threat and the danger of omniscience. The source asks us to consider a pretty terrifying hypothetical. What if a historical dictator, someone like Hitler, possessed today's AI technology? Historically, tracking people was a manual process, social networks were just physical word-of-mouth connections, and evasion was, at least possible. But flip that over to an AI-empowered regime. An authoritarian state would have automated, instantaneous access to your entire digital friend tree. Evasion becomes practically impossible. Why? Because the system would monitor things at such a micro level, like a tiny, unexplained bump in water or power usage at a friend's house, and instantly pinpoint your location. The argument is that this level of tech would make historical atrocities look like amateur hour. To really hammer home our complete inability to comprehend an ASI, the source shares this wildly vivid analogy. They say it's like an alien life form, literally a spaceship, just on the other side of Uranus, heading straight for Earth. And humanity? We are eagerly building a welcoming committee for this alien intelligence, despite having absolutely no idea how it thinks, or more importantly, if it's hostile. It's a stark warning that we're blindly inviting a vastly superior intelligence into our home without any meaningful preparation for a worst-case scenario. Which leads us straight into the baby gate metaphor. The argument here is that tech leaders who think they can seamlessly control an ASI are completely fooling themselves. If we try to build guardrails or safety protocols, it's exactly like putting up a baby gate. In this scenario, humanity is just a room full of toddlers. An ASI is going to effortlessly step right over any barrier we construct with the exact same ease a human adult steps over a flimsy plastic gate. Next up is Section 3, Silicon Valley's moral dilemma. Can we versus should we? Here we see a massive ideological clash regarding the ethics of the tech industry. On one side, you have what's labeled the Silicon Valley mindset. This is entirely driven by the question, what is possible? Can we do it? It's a mindset that pursues progress relentlessly, often without hitting the brakes for caution. On the flip side, you have moral limitation. This operates on a much different question. What is moral? Should we actually do it? The central argument the source is making here is super profound. Technology has the incredible power to take us from what is natural to what is possible, sure, but it's only human moral limitations that can actually define what is good.
The source actually frames this ethical critique using a very familiar religious narrative, the story of the Garden of Eden. They draw a direct parallel between the tech industry's relentless pursuit of ASI and the perilous search for ultimate knowledge, specifically the dangerous desire to essentially become like God. The warning is pretty clear-cut. Searching for knowledge isn't inherently evil, but when that search morphs into a quest for absolute godhood without any moral boundaries, it carries a potentially devastating price tag.
That brings us to Section 4, the geopolitical endgame, how governments might actually react. Now we're getting into some really intense territory. Consider this state intervention theory, which comes straight from an anonymous industry insider. Here is the predicted chain of events. First, the exact moment we achieve AGI, humanity fundamentally loses control, simply because we're no longer the smartest entities in the room. Second, global powers, we're talking the US, China, Russia, suddenly realize they are rapidly losing their sovereignty and control over their own populations. Third, in a desperate bid to protect themselves, these states enforce a strict, hard ban on any further AI advancement. And fourth, if tech developers refuse to halt their work, the state steps in with extreme, lethal measures. The insider's prediction on this is incredibly stark. To quote them directly, they just start offing people that are saying, "I want ASI." The theory heavily suggests that nations are always going to prioritize their absolute power and self-preservation above technological progress. Long before they allow a tech CEO to successfully boot up a superintelligence that renders world governments completely obsolete, state intelligence agencies will simply eliminate the creators. It's a dramatic, violent theory of escalation, and it sharply defines just how unimaginably high the stakes really are in the space.
Finally, we reach Section 5, Technology versus Moral Growth, the Human Deficit.
The source shares an anecdote from an 85-year-old father that highlights a really massive societal disparity. Think about it like this. Back in the first century, our basic spiritual and moral baseline was essentially set. Fast forward through the 20th century, and humanity makes an unbelievable technological leap. We go from mastering fire all the way to launching the moonshot. And now, here in the 21st century, we're building godlike ASI toys. The big, overarching point here is that while our scientific progress curve has gone completely vertical, our spiritual and moral growth has basically flatlined for thousands of years. We are fundamentally the exact same people we were millennia ago. We're just wielding vastly more dangerous tools.
Which leaves us staring at this final, lingering question. Has our technology fatally outpaced our spiritual growth? It's a profound summary of everything this narrative is warning us about. If we possess the raw technological power of gods, but completely lack the moral and spiritual maturity to actually wield it responsibly, what exactly happens to us next? It's an incredibly deep, kind of heavy concept to grapple with, and I really hope this exploration has helped you digest this complex and honestly somewhat frightening perspective. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you next time.